Ethan Cole sat in the wide glass hall of Meridian Station, looking out at the endless black of space. Stars drifted in the distance like tiny fires, and ships moved slowly in and out of the docking rings. To many travelers, Meridian Station was just another hub, but to Ethan it was more than that. It was his first posting away from Earth, his first chance to see what humanity meant in the galaxy. He sipped his warm drink and adjusted his jacket. Around him, aliens of many shapes and colors walked by. Some towered with heavy armor-like skin, others floated with glowing lights inside transparent shells. They all ignored the young human sitting alone at the window. Except her. She sat 2 seats away, her posture stiff and formal. She was slim, with faint scales across her cheeks that caught the light like glass. Her eyes were sharp, golden-like, a hawk's, and her long, dark cloak wrapped tightly around her frame. Ethan had seen her before, always in the same place, always near him. She never spoke much, and when she did, her voice was calm, almost cold. Her name was Liara. At first, Ethan thought it was coincidence, but after a week of the same pattern, he noticed something strange. Each time she sat near him, she eventually leaned just a little closer, and sometimes when the hall felt quiet and still, she pressed lightly against his arm or shoulder. She never looked at him when she did it. Instead, she muttered, "Cold," as if that explained everything. Ethan found it odd. He had read files about her species, the Kailari. They came from a frozen world where blizzards lasted months and ice storms shaped their cities. Kailari bodies were built for cold. They had strong hearts and layers of natural heat inside their scaled skin. The idea of one being cold on a warm space station was almost laughable. But Ethan never laughed. He just nodded, as if he believed her excuse. One evening, the hall was nearly empty. Ethan worked on a datapad reviewing ship schematics for his engineering duties. Liara came again, silent as always, her cloak brushing the floor. She sat beside him this time, closer than before. Without a word, she leaned against him. Her scales were cool but not freezing. Her cloak smelled faintly of metal and rain. "Cold," she said again softly. Ethan turned his head. "You sure about that? This place keeps the air at 24 degrees. Liara did not look at him. Her golden eyes stayed on the stars. "Kailari, bones ache in still air," she replied. "Cold." Ethan wanted to question her more, but something in her voice stopped him. It was not the tone of someone shivering. It was the tone of someone who needed an excuse. He smiled faintly and went back to his datapad. "Then stay close. No point freezing in space." For a moment, he thought she would pull away. Instead, she stayed pressed against his side, silent, but steady. Days passed. Ethan worked long hours fixing docking clamps and power lines on the outer hull. Life on the station was tiring, but each time he returned to the hall, she was there, always near, always with the same excuse. Other humans on the station joked about Kailari being distant, unfriendly, even arrogant. Ethan began to wonder if Liara was different, or if she was hiding something under her cold mask. One afternoon, when Ethan came back from a dangerous repair job, Liara was waiting. A thin crack ran across his glove, and his arm still trembled from the near vacuum outside. He sat heavily in his chair, tired and annoyed. Liara shifted closer almost instantly. "Cold?" she asked herself, then leaned into him again. Ethan chuckled weakly. "Funny, I think I'm the one who's cold this time." Her eyes flickered, almost like a smile that never reached her lips. She didn't move away. The truth kept circling in Ethan's mind. He knew she wasn't really cold. He knew Kailari didn't need warmth from humans. But he also knew something else. She could sit anywhere in the vast hall, yet she always chose him. Out of hundreds of aliens and dozens of humans, it was him she pressed against. Why? Perhaps it was curiosity. Perhaps it was something more. Ethan couldn't tell yet, but he decided not to push her away. Late that night, as the hall grew empty, Ethan closed his datapad and stretched. Liara was still beside him, her golden eyes on the endless black beyond the glass. "You know," he said softly. "You don't have to explain yourself to me." She tilted her head, her cloak shifting. "Explain?" "The cold thing," Ethan said. "I don't mind. Whatever the reason, you can just sit." For the first time, her eyes turned to him directly. There was no sharpness in them, only something softer, harder to name. Then she looked away again. "Humans speak too much," she whispered. But she didn't move away. Ethan smiled to himself. He didn't need more words. He knew something important had begun, even if Liara pretended otherwise. As the station lights dimmed for the artificial night, Ethan realized something simple but powerful. In a galaxy full of strange species, sometimes what made humans special wasn't strength or power. Sometimes it was the simple act of sitting beside someone, giving them space to be more than what their culture allowed. And maybe, just maybe, that was why Liara kept pretending she was cold. Ethan Cole's days on Meridian Station quickly fell into a rhythm. In the mornings, he worked on repair schedules for the human engineering crew. In the afternoons, he patched circuits or tightened clamps outside the hull. And in the evenings, when the station quieted down, he sat in the wide, glass hall overlooking the stars, and almost every evening Liara appeared. She never asked if she could join him. She simply sat down, her cloak wrapped around her, her golden eyes calm and distant. Then, after a while, she would lean against him with the same soft word: cold. At first, Ethan thought it was only a habit, maybe even a joke. But as days turned to weeks, he noticed more. She came not just when the hall was empty, but also when it was crowded. She ignored the other Kailari, even when they passed nearby. She never spoke to other humans either. Only him. It was strange. Kailari were known for keeping to their own kind, proud and private. Yet Liara kept choosing him, as if she trusted him more than her own people. One evening, Ethan decided to test his suspicion. He shifted in his seat, leaving a wide space between them. Sure enough, within minutes, Liara leaned sideways and closed the gap again. Ethan hid his smile. "You're freezing again?" Liara's eyes flickered to him for a moment. "Cold," she said, as if that explained everything. Ethan didn't push the question further. But inside, he wondered what her real reason was. The next day, Ethan was assigned to an exterior repair team. A power conduit along the outer ring had blown, and the docking bay lights kept flickering. 3 humans were sent out in suits, Ethan among them. The vacuum outside was endless and quiet, only the hum of his suit systems keeping him company. As he tightened a panel, a shadow moved beside him. At first he thought it was another human crewmate, but then he saw her, Liara. She floated calmly in her own suit, sleek and darker than theirs, marked with sharp Kalari designs. "What are you doing out here?" Ethan asked through the comms, surprised. Her voice was steady. "Observation duty." "Observation of what?" She did not answer. Instead, she floated close, her figure almost brushing against his side. "Cold," she said again. Ethan laughed into the comm. "In a vacuum? You're impossible." But she stayed near, her movements synchronized with his as if she had chosen him as her anchor in the empty dark. Ethan felt oddly comforted by her presence, though he still didn't understand why she always needed an excuse. Later that night, when they returned inside, Ethan tried to learn more. They sat in their usual place in the glass hall. "You know," he said slowly, "I read about Kalari once. You don't get cold easy. You grew up on frozen worlds, right?" Liara kept her gaze fixed on the stars. "Information about Kalari is often incomplete." "So you're saying the records are wrong?" Ethan asked. "Not wrong. Just shallow." Her words hung in the air like a locked door. Ethan wanted to knock again, but he could sense she would not open it. Not yet. Meanwhile, trouble was brewing on Meridian Station. Tension between humans and another alien group, the Turok, was rising. The Turok were larger, broad-shouldered, with hard chitin-like shells. They often mocked humans for being fragile. One evening, Ethan saw a group of Turok blocking the hallway. A young human technician tried to pass, but the Turok shoved him back. Too weak, one sneered. Humans should stay on their own planet. Ethan stepped forward, ready to help, but before he could speak, Liara moved first. She stood tall, her cloak sweeping behind her, and faced the Turok with steady golden eyes. "Move," she ordered. The Turok laughed. "And who are you to speak?" Liara's voice turned sharp, colder than any ice. "One who does not waste time on insects." The Turok hesitated. There was something in her stance, something that carried weight. After a long moment, they backed away, muttering under their breath. The human technician ran off, thankful. Ethan stared at Liara, surprised. "You didn't have to do that," he said. Her expression did not change. "Cold," she replied softly. And then she moved closer to his side again as they walked away. Ethan almost laughed at the absurdity. She had just faced down a group of hostile aliens but still used the same excuse. Yet he was beginning to understand. The word was not about temperature. It was her shield, her way to hide something she could not say aloud. That night, as they sat together once more, Ethan decided to test his guess. "Liara," he said gently, "do Kalari ever lean on each other for comfort?" She went very still. "Comfort is weakness, Kalari endure. But you're here, with me, every night." Her eyes flicker. The station hummed with activity. Outside, cargo ships glided slowly through the docking bay, while inside, humans and aliens moved in a careful, uneasy rhythm. Tensions were growing. Rumors of a Turok strike against Meridian Station had begun circulating. Humans, as always, were considered weak, incapable of defending themselves against a stronger species. Ethan Cole had spent the morning checking life support conduits in the lower decks. He wiped sweat from his forehead and sighed. Another long day? Another reminder of how fragile humans were in the galaxy's eyes. Liara appeared at her usual spot in the glass hall, her cloak sweeping lightly behind her. She slid into the seat beside him, her golden eyes glinting. For a moment, she simply watched the stars. Then, as always, she pressed lightly against him. "Cold," she muttered. Ethan smiled. "I think the universe is colder than you think, but you're not freezing, are you?" She didn't answer. She rarely did, but Ethan had learned to read the silence. Later that day, the warning alarms rang through the station. Red lights pulsed as security announced a Turok patrol was approaching, heading straight for the human sector. Ethan's heart jumped. He wasn't a fighter. He fixed machines, not weapons. But he knew he couldn't stay idle. Liara moved beside him without hesitation. "Stay close," she said. "What?" Ethan asked, surprised. Her eyes didn't leave the monitors. "You will need help." Together they rushed toward the human living quarters. The Turok were already here, tall and broad, their chitin shells reflecting the red warning lights. Their leader, a massive figure with spiked shoulders, sneered. "Humans," the Turok growled. "Time to vanish." Ethan froze, unsure what to do. The humans around him looked frightened. Then Liara stepped forward. "Enough," she said, her voice firm and commanding. The Turok laughed. "And what will a Kalari girl do against us?" Liara didn't answer. Instead, she moved quickly, positioning herself between Ethan and the Turok. Her cloak twirled like shadowed steel and her golden eyes shone with determination. She didn't strike immediately, but her stance spoke of strength, confidence, and skill. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. For the first time, he realized Liara's quiet closeness was more than just habit. She had strength, real strength. And she had chosen to use it to protect him. The Turok hesitated, their confidence shaken by the unexpected intervention. One of them took a step forward. Liara's eyes locked onto him. "You will not touch them," she said. Her words carried weight, commanding attention in a way that no human could match. Even the other Kailari on the station, who had gathered at the hall's entrance, took notice. The Turok leader snarled, but after a tense moment, he signaled his group to retreat. Their heavy steps echoed through the hall as they left, grumbling, insults under their breath. Ethan blinked, still in shock. "You saved us." Liara didn't look at him. She adjusted her cloak and muttered, "Cold." Ethan laughed softly. Right, of course. The classic excuse. But inside he felt something else. Gratitude, yes, but also wonder. He had seen the Kailari act before, but never with such decisiveness, never with such warmth toward someone else. That night the hall was quiet again. Lights dimmed, leaving only the stars beyond the glass. Ethan and Liara sat side by side. He watched her scale patterns shimmer faintly in the soft light. "You know," he said slowly, "you didn't have to do that today. You didn't have to protect me." Her eyes flickered briefly to him. "You were weak," she said simply. "Humans are usually too weak to be interesting." Ethan chuckled. "Weak? Maybe. But I think humans can surprise a lot of species." Liara's golden eyes softened for a moment. Though she quickly looked away, she pressed lightly against him again, just as she always did. "Cold," she whispered. Ethan shook his head. "You're impossible." She didn't respond, but he noticed a small change. A subtle shift in the way she leaned, a tiny warmth in her presence that wasn't there before. The next day, Ethan reflected on the events. Humans were underestimated, yes, but Liara had seen potential where others didn't. She had acted not because of duty, not because of protocol, but because she wanted to. And she had wanted him to be safe. It was a lesson Ethan never expected, to learn from an alien. The galaxy often seemed cold and uncaring, but sometimes the simplest connections could change everything. Over the following week, the Turok avoided the human sector. Rumors spread that the humans were not as weak as they seemed, and somewhere behind those rumors Ethan knew Liara's actions had played a part. Still, she continued to hide her true feelings under the same excuse. Each time she pressed against him, each time she muttered "cold," Ethan understood a little more. She wasn't cold. She was careful. She was cautious. She was human in her own alien way. And maybe, just maybe, she had started to trust him. Ethan's curiosity grew. Why did she choose to stay close? Why did she risk herself for humans for him? And why, in a galaxy that valued strength and power, did the smallest acts of connection seem the most remarkable? He didn't ask these questions aloud. Liara didn't like questions. But he paid attention to the hidden signals. The moments when she allowed herself to be near. The tiny warmth that seemed to grow each time they sat together. In the quiet of the hall, watching stars drift by, Ethan made a silent promise. Whatever came next, whatever dangers the Turok or the universe might bring, he would not let this connection, this fragile trust, be wasted. For the first time, he realized that humans were not just survivors. Humans were warm, clever, and capable of surprising the galaxy in ways that even the strongest species could not predict. And Liara, pretending cold as she was beginning to show him exactly why humans were special. Meridian Station had become tense. The Turok threat had not disappeared entirely. Their patrols were less frequent, but the humans remained wary. Ethan Cole spent most of his days fixing systems and maintaining the fragile balance of life on the station. He had grown used to the quiet hum of machinery and the soft glow of the hall lights. But what he had not grown used to was Liara's constant presence. She still appeared at the glass hall every evening, sliding into her usual seat beside him, pressing lightly against his side, whispering her familiar word, "Cold." But tonight, something felt different. The alarms rang suddenly, cutting through the station's calm. Red lights flashed and the security systems announced a breach. Ethan's heart jumped. He grabbed his comm and ran toward the lower docking bay. The source of the alert was a minor sabotage. Someone had tried to disable a section of the power grid. It could have caused serious damage if not fixed quickly. Liara appeared at his side almost instantly, her cloak flowing behind her. "Where?" she asked, her voice sharp. "In the southern docking bay. The lights, they're flickering, and—" "The controls are offline," Ethan replied. Without hesitation, she moved beside him as they ran. Her movements were precise and fast, almost like a human-trained fighter, but smoother and sharper. Ethan struggled to keep up, but she stayed at his side, scanning the area with her golden eyes. When they arrived, they found a small group of Turok mercenaries trying to override the power panels. Humans were already in the area, frozen in panic. "Move," Liara ordered. Her voice was calm but carried authority. The Turok laughed. "And who are you to stop us?" one growled. Liara stepped forward. Her body was not fragile, as humans might expect. Her scales shimmered faintly in the red lights, her stance unyielding. She reached forward, a flash of precise movement sending the nearest mercenary stumbling back. She did not strike aggressively. She simply moved with speed and confidence, shielding Ethan and the other humans. Ethan stared, amazed. She had always been quiet, careful, pretending cold, but now he could see her true self. She was strong, capable, and fearless. After the mercenaries fled, Liara finally allowed herself to breathe. She pressed lightly against Ethan again. "Cold," she muttered, but this time her voice had a softness he had never noticed. "You're incredible," Ethan said quietly, still catching his breath. Her eyes met his briefly. "Kaylari endure," she said, "but I chose to protect." Ethan's stomach tightened. She had used the same word, the same excuse, but the meaning had changed. It was no longer just a cover. It was a shield hiding her true feelings. That night, back in the glass hall, Ethan couldn't stop thinking about what he had seen. Liara had faced danger for humans, for him, without hesitation. She had risked her reputation among her own species. And yet she still leaned lightly against him, muttering cold as if to make it normal. He realized that her habit of pretending to be cold was not about the temperature. It was about hiding vulnerability. Over the next few days, the station began to stabilize, but Ethan noticed a change in Liara. She stayed closer than ever. Sometimes when the hall was empty, she would brush her hand lightly against his arm or shoulder while pretending to adjust her cloak. Her eyes, once sharp and distant, now flickered with something he could not name. Trust, curiosity, perhaps even something warmer. Ethan wanted to ask her about it, but he didn't. She was cautious, careful, and he knew better than to force her to speak. Instead, he learned to read her hidden signals. The subtle brush of her hand, the way she shifted closer, the tiny warmth that seemed to spread whenever she leaned against him. Then came another test. A minor hull breach occurred in the cargo bay. Ethan was first to respond, grabbing tools and heading to the scene. Liara followed silently. The air pressure fluctuated. Meridian Station was tense. The Turok threat had not vanished, and now rumors of a coordinated attack reached the human sector. Ethan Cole had spent weeks preparing systems, checking circuits, and maintaining defenses. But today felt different. He could feel the pressure building in the air. Liara was at her usual spot in the glass hall, watching the stars. Her golden eyes seemed sharper, her posture firmer. She moved with a quiet confidence that Ethan had grown to rely on. When he approached, she shifted closer, her hand brushing lightly against his arm. "Cold," she muttered as always. Ethan smiled faintly. "Right. Of course. Cold," he said, shaking his head. But inside he felt a strange warmth. Her presence had become more than just comfort. It was reassurance, courage, and trust rolled into one. The alarm sounded suddenly, red lights flashing across the hall. A Turok strike team had breached the station's outer defenses. Humans scrambled. Engineers ran to control panels while security officers tried to coordinate. Ethan felt his pulse quicken. He wasn't trained to fight, yet he knew he had to. Help. Liara appeared immediately, sliding alongside him. Stay with me, she said, her voice calm but commanding. Together they moved through the station. Systems were failing in sections. Lights flickered, warning sirens echoed, and the hum of energy fields buzzed in the background. Humans scattered, trying to avoid confrontation with the larger, stronger Turok. Ethan swallowed hard. How do we stop them? He asked. Liara's golden eyes met his. With skill, and with human strengths, she said. Follow me. They arrived at a control hub near the docking bay. A few Turok soldiers had surrounded a group of humans, who were trapped, trying to repair a broken energy conduit. Liara stepped forward without hesitation. Her cloak flowed behind her, her movements precise and fluid. The Turok laughed. Another Kalari girl thinks she can challenge us? One sneered. Liara's stance shifted, just enough to show the power, beneath her calm. Move, she said. Not a question, not a threat. Just a command. Ethan watched, awed. She was not acting cold this time. She was fierce, protective, and confident. She moved with skill, redirecting the Turok soldiers without unnecessary violence. Her golden eyes scanned the area constantly, anticipating every move. Ethan, unsure what to do at first, began to act as well. Humans were small, weak by galactic standards, but they had creativity. Using small panels and tools, he created distractions, blocked paths, and assisted the trapped humans. Liara followed him, covering him and guiding others with precise movements. Hours seemed to pass in minutes. The Turok, frustrated by humans' clever tactics, began to retreat. Their larger size was useless against ingenuity, coordination, and Liara's skillful protection. When the area was secure, Liara finally leaned against Ethan, whispering her usual word. Cold. Ethan laughed softly. You really can't let that go, can you? She didn't answer. But he noticed a faint warmth spreading from her shoulder, stronger than ever before. It was subtle, but it felt real. For the first time, her words seemed like a small joke, a way to hide something deeper rather than an excuse. Later, in the glass hall, the two sat quietly. Outside, stars drifted endlessly. Ethan's mind replayed the events. Humans had survived, even thrived, in a situation that should have overwhelmed them, and Liara had been there every step of the way, not as an outsider, not as an observer, but as an ally who risked everything to protect them. You saved us, Ethan said softly, breaking the silence. Liara's golden eyes met his briefly. Kalari, endure. I chose to act. You didn't have to, Ethan said. You could have walked away. Her gaze flickered, and for a moment, her usual distance disappeared. She pressed lightly against him again, but this time, there was no hesitation. Humans interest me, she whispered. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. She wasn't just protecting humans. She was choosing to stay close to him, sharing a small part of herself in a galaxy that rarely showed trust. The following days were tense. Humans and aliens worked side by side to repair systems damaged by the Turok attack. Yet something had shifted between Ethan and Liara. Their bond had deepened. Small gestures like brushing hands across a control panel, leaning slightly closer during tense moments, and shared glances had become part of their silent communication. She still muttered cold from time to time, but Ethan now understood it as part of her careful nature. She was cautious, protective, and trying to navigate her own feelings while respecting her culture's rules. Ethan, in return, found a new confidence. Humans might be considered weak by others, but with creativity, courage, and trust, they could make a difference. And he had learned to trust himself as well, inspired by Liara's quiet strength. One night, after the station had quieted, Ethan and Liara walked along the observation deck. The stars reflected in their eyes, and the soft hum of energy fields surrounded them. You don't have to pretend anymore, Ethan said gently. Liara tilted her head, looking at him with golden eyes that reflected both caution and curiosity. Pretend? Yes, Ethan said. The cold act. I know it's an excuse. You don't need it with me. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she pressed lightly against him again, but this time with intention. Her whisper was softer, more real. I trust you. Ethan felt warmth spread through him. It was not just from her body pressing against his side. It was something deeper. The first true signal of trust from someone who had hidden her feelings for so long. In that quiet moment, Ethan understood something vital. Humans were not only strong in their actions, clever in their solutions, or brave in their hearts. Humans were special because they could inspire trust, warmth, and loyalty, even in the most distant and reserved beings in the galaxy. Liara, pretending cold all this time, had finally begun to show her true self. As the observation deck lights dimmed for the artificial night, Ethan smiled faintly. The galaxy was vast, cold, and often uncaring, but small acts of connection, trust, and courage could make a difference. And in that moment he knew that with Liara by his side, humans could achieve more than anyone expected. And Liara in turn had discovered that letting herself lean, even just slightly, was not weakness. It was strength. Meridian Station was tense. The Turok were planning a full assault and the human sector braced itself for the worst. Engineers, security officers, and volunteers worked tirelessly to reinforce the hull, restore power, and prepare defenses. Ethan Cole moved through the corridors, checking panels, guiding repair crews, and keeping spirits high. Liara moved with him, her golden eyes sharp, her cloak flowing behind her. She no longer pretended cold as much as she once did. Small gestures, her hand brushing lightly against his arm, the slight lean when passing through narrow corridors, signaled trust and companionship rather than excuses. "Stay close," she said, her voice steady. Ethan nodded. "Always," he replied. The Turok arrived in force. Massive ships pressed against the docking bay shields, sending vibrations through the station. Red lights flashed across the hallways. Humans scattered, unsure how to face enemies far larger, stronger, and more heavily armed than themselves. But Ethan, Liara, and a small team of humans had a plan. Using ingenuity, speed, and careful coordination, they moved quickly through the station, activating automated defenses and rerouting power to critical systems. Liara's skills were essential. She covered humans, guided their movements, and, when necessary, stepped into danger herself to protect them. Ethan marveled at her courage. Every step she took beside him reinforced a lesson he had learned over weeks. Humans were not weak. Their creativity, bravery, and determination could turn the tide in ways others could not predict. In the main docking bay, the Turok soldiers moved aggressively, expecting humans to falter. But they miscalculated. Humans were clever. Using small panels, tools, and rerouted energy lines, they created barriers, distractions, and traps. Liara moved fluidly among them, shielding Ethan and the other humans from harm. "You're amazing," Ethan whispered as she redirected a Turok soldier away from a vulnerable engineer. "Kailari endure," she said softly. "But humans adapt." Her words reminded Ethan why he had always admired her. She respected humans, valued their ingenuity, and yet trusted them enough to risk herself. And in doing so, she had shown that the galaxy underestimated humanity's potential. Hours passed in a blur of motion. Turok forces grew frustrated and disorganized. Their size and strength could not overcome the humans' clever tactics, combined with Liara's precise interventions. Slowly, the tide turned. The final push came when the Turok attempted to breach the station's central command room. Ethan and Liara led a small human team, using rerouted energy grids and quick thinking to block their path. Liara positioned, herself at the front, moving with speed and skill, protecting Ethan while coordinating others. For the first time, Liara removed all pretense. She no longer whispered cold or hid behind excuses. She acted openly, fiercely, and with complete trust in those around her. Ethan realized in that moment that humans, and their allies, could achieve greatness not through sheer strength, but through courage, intelligence, and loyalty. When the Turok finally retreated, Meridian Station remained intact. Humans had survived not because they were strong in the traditional sense, but because they were resourceful, brave, and united. The Kailari and other species took notice. Humans were no longer dismissed as fragile or weak. Liara stood beside